Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello, everybody. Welcome to one more week of the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. And this week is joining us Cynthia Krakmar. Hey, Cynthia, welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Vasco, for inviting me. I'm really delighted to be here with you.
Absolutely. So Cynthia is a business transformation and human capital managing consultant, passionate about creating innovative, stimulating, and healthy organizations for people. She's Agile agnostic and has worked as a Scrum Master, Agile coach, and also Agile transformation lead in the life sciences area. She loves singing, traveling. She's been in 63 countries. That's quite a lot. And cycling and running. So, Cynthia, that was a short intro. Tell us a bit more about yourself and how did you end up becoming a Scrum Master?
Yeah, thank you very much, Vasco, for the question. So, a bit about me. So my career started in the innovation industry, actually, where I became a design thinking facilitator. So initially, my expertise was more bringing people through design sprint and not necessarily actually being a Scrum Master initially. But very quickly, I was working in a startup and we were actually working in a very agile way without actually a proper structure. We didn't really know how to call what we were doing. So at some point, we've adopted holacracy. But then we started to transition to actually Scrum because we knew that Scrum was something that our clients were asking for, because a lot of people know Scrum they kind of confuse Scrum with Agile. And so I thought at that point I would actually upskill myself and work as a Scrum Master. So but maybe I also want to say that that for 5 years now, I'm actually not always a Scrum Master. I always become a Scrum Master when there is a need for a Scrum Master and for some discipline around the process. And in non-tech environments, where it's not always that easy to define the product we are trying to build. And so before jumping as a Scrum Master, there is a whole discovery phase that I usually do with my teams to be able to understand. So we start with the value stream mapping. We do try to understand what is the value delivery and what might be the product we would like to sort of organize along. And so I mean, for me, being a Scrum Master, like when I'm a Scrum Master, is because mostly there is a need.
Yeah. And usually this need, does it revolve around the team or the client asking for a Scrum team? Like, what do you think triggers that need?
Yeah, this is a very good question, because I feel clients are usually asking for it without understanding what it is. And so for me, there is this discovery phase to be done about what are we trying to produce. Would Scrum be the right methodology, or could we adopt maybe lean approaches or Kanban? And then I will also have this conversation with the team and see the appetite, because it takes a lot to apply Scrum. I don't think it's something that people can learn straight away unless they want to. So I would wait also for the commitment from teams, and also for the leadership when I'm working with big organizations to also understand what they need to put in place for the teams to be able to operate in Scrum.
Absolutely. And all of those things need to be part of our thinking when we are helping the teams get started and get into a new project. But Cynthia, because you've worked mostly in non-tech environments, so that's really interesting for me, I would like to explore as it is today is Monday here on the podcast. So we'll explore one story of failure. And I'm curious to learn more about that and also what you might have found perhaps are specificities of the non-tech environment around Scrum and how it is used. So tell us that story. We'll dive into the details and the insights later on, but walk us through that story first, Cynthia.
Yeah, sure. So typically, if we can consider that as a failure, is more that I was okay. So at that time, I was working for an insurance company um, that was actually a complex system that was being developed. I wasn't brought in to be a Scrum Master, but I was actually brought in to be a training lead. So I was supposed to develop a user-centric training for people to understand this new system. But I very quickly understood that there were different actors around building the system with different level of knowledge. And I started also to see that I started to identify, oh, there is this product owner. There is actually this team around the system that needs to deliver it. Because I'm training people, so the system needs to be ready. And actually, they are not ready. They are very far away, and they probably need somebody to take care of the process and make these people achieve their objectives.
So you when you were looking at it, did you see that the product owner team interaction was not working, or was it that they were just late with the delivery?
They were late with the delivery. Communication was missing also in between the product owner and the developers. Actually, they were in a structured team, and they didn't know exactly what was the purpose. They didn't align on timelines. So I actually jumped in here.
So it was like chaos,
Master.
Basically.
It was chaos. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yes, it was chaos, and nobody was brave enough to say it actually. And that was a situation where me as a training lead, I thought, okay, that's the need. This team needs to focus. They need to align. And so I started to become the Scrum Master. And so I reach out to the product owner to sort of make this person also understand they were actually the product owner, because they weren't familiar with Scrum. Yeah. And so then with this person, we started to sort of build the team. We've created a backlog, and then I was actually saying I wasn't in a Scrum Master in tech environment, but I was in the end, but not hired as such, but I ended up becoming.
You ended up being pushed into that position.
Indeed, exactly.
So tell us a little bit more about what you learned from that experience, because of course you had gone there to take a different role, right? Like you were the training lead, as you said, and then you started to say, okay, but there's a big gap here, and I need to help them. So what are the key lessons you took from this story, Cynthia?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think very often I see that clients don't know what they need. And so being able to identify the need and explaining what is the role that is missing, I think it's one thing. But then with big organization, it takes so much time to find the person, find the budget, etc., that you better jump in and help and make things happen. And I think this is really part of who I am as an Agile agnostic, is that this time Scrum was adapted. But if Scrum isn't adapted, I'll jump in and come up with what I believe is the right frameworks to make this happen.
Absolutely. And for those of us, maybe Scrum Masters or potential Scrum Masters in this case, that are there and watching their team fail and perhaps wanting to help, but not necessarily knowing how, what would you recommend they do, Cynthia?
I think that I would really recommend that they remain open-minded about Scrum being one possibility. That's one thing. So exploring also other frameworks that might be more suited. Typically, currently, I'm working in the life science industry where, some previous companies tried to apply Scrum and it failed. because it's not adapted to the nature of work. So I really recommend new joiners or maybe existing Scrum Master to remain open-minded and always focus on what are we trying to achieve and what is actually helping the teams. I think Scrum is a good way for new joiners also to sort of experiment a methodology because it's well structured, and having this discipline make you sort of understand also the power of this specific methodology. Some other methodologies might be a bit more flexible, and for new joiners it might be a bit harder to sort of get the benefit out of these. So I do understand why also a lot of companies are starting with Scrum. But I guess for me, it's also it's beyond Agile. There are plenty of other methodologies that might also be interesting and helping you bring and build your own toolkit. So I believe every single client is different, and what you're building for them needs to be unique. And that's really important then to sort of bring different bits and pieces from everywhere that makes sense for the client.
Absolutely. There are plenty of other methods out there that can be helpful, and staying open-minded. And as you said, be building the toolkit, or as we call it here, building the toolbox, is very important. Cynthia, It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for sharing that story with us.
Thank you.
Monday is about what we learn from our obstacles and our failures. But tomorrow is Team Tuesday here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. We explore teams and their journeys, the habits they develop that threaten their performance, how each of our guests help their teams evolve, and the one key lesson they learned from that experience. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.